I have to say, I feel like a rock star. This is amazing.
Wow, so many wonderful humans out there.
Not so skeptical now, are we, about psychology?
Love life and enjoy every moment.
Good afternoon, everyone. How are you? Hope you're enjoying this amazing conference. I'm just getting my woks set up, and I'm going to demonstrate two dishes for you this afternoon. We don't have a lot of time, however, I chose these two dishes to demonstrate and talk you through because I think they really reflect our mantra at Billy Kwong very well. But just to give you a little bit of background, first of all, I'm a third generation Australian, 29th generation Kwong. And my two brothers and I grew up in North Epping, the northwestern suburbs of Sydney, with my parents many years ago. And, sorry, when you plug that in, we'll just turn that on so it's boiling. Okay. Now, when we were growing up, so say from the age of 0 to 13, we were the only Asian children in our neighbourhood and at our school, at North Epping Primary School. We never experienced any kind of racial discrimination, even though we were absolutely the minority, and that was all due to my mum's beautiful Chinese food. In fact, the Kwong kids were very popular because of Mrs. Kwong's cooking. Now let me just make sure this is happening, doing what it's meant to be doing. Okay, yes, that's good. Let me just pop this on for a moment. Okay, she'll talk you through that in a moment. So, yes, we were very popular because of Mum's beautiful Cantonese-style food. And of course, ever since I can remember, like from the age of 5, Mum taught me how to cook, and my two brothers. And it was because of Mum's love of cooking. She not only loved it, but she was actually a very good, and still is a fantastic home-style Cantonese cook. She loved shopping at the markets, the Sydney fish markets, the local Italian greengrocer store, the local butcher, etc. She loved forming all of those amazing relationships with all of these different producers. And I guess that's where I learnt from a very early age that, food connects people and food makes people happy. Because of all of the wonderful daily lessons that my mother taught us kind of intuitively, and just because of the way she went about her business. And I think, she's never to this day ever complained about, cooking was a chore and having to cook the meal for the family every single night for, 20 plus years. And this of course was, on top of keeping down a full-time job. She and Dad, were rearing a young family. So she was and still is this amazing person. So as an adult, of course, I'm going to turn into a passionate foodie and cook and restaurateur. My restaurant, Billy Kwong, has been going for 18 and a half years, and as some of you may know, we spent our first 14 years in Crown Street, Surrey Hills, in a little kind of shoebox of a place, 69.5 metres square to be precise. And 3.5 years ago, we moved to my dream restaurant, which is now in Macleay Street, Potts Point, and it's about 3 times the size. A year before we made the physical move to Potts Point, I, of course, was thinking through the Billy Kwong philosophy, thinking through how I could enhance the mantra for this huge, big move. And, of course, Macleay Street, Potts Point, and that whole King's Cross, Potts Point, Elizabeth Bay area is a very thriving, dynamic village. And I feel very privileged to be a part of it. So a year before we opened, I made a kind of wish list of all of the different community services and people or businesses within that vicinity that I would, like to be engaged with from a community aspect and from a restaurant level, because I really wanted to bring in the community into the new Billy Kwong, which was, something that was very important to me, and of course it still is. So when we made the move, I enhanced the mantra to become celebration, collaboration, and community. The 3 C's is what my staff and I call it. Apart from excellent quality food, wine, service and surroundings, I truly believe, and I always have felt this, that a restaurant, well, any business actually, needs to have soul, it needs to have depth, it needs to have a strong reason for being. And of course, the owner and all of the staff, we need to feel passionate about sharing our story. So when I was considering the future for Billy Kwong, I spent much time reflecting upon what it was that actually, made me the happiest in life. Family, friendship, connection, meaningful relationships within the community, and of course, great quality food, wine, and creating an environment where everyone could feel at home and feel as if they could just be themselves. This is what my staff and I have always tried to create in the restaurant. And these two dishes I'm about to show you directly reflect the Billy Kwong philosophy. And of course, as I just said, it all stemmed from my mother's love of cooking and the way, she so amazingly showed my two brothers and I. So the first dish I'm going to talk you through is, of course, the steamed Billy Kwong pork buns. So you are all familiar with the, ubiquitous pork bun, which has been around, in the Chinese food repertoire for thousands of years. So when I made the move to Potts Point, one of the amazing businesses or community services that I really wanted to engage with and connect with was, of course, that extraordinary place called the Wayside Chapel. The Wayside Chapel is only 500 metres up the road from Billy Kwong, and as you know, it's a very inspiring community service that literally helps people on a daily basis, people who have, literally fallen by the wayside, the homeless people, drug addicts, and so on. Up on the Wayside Chapel rooftop, there is a beautiful sustainable garden. And Indira Naidu, who you've heard from today, and isn't she one of the great people? I love Indira. Indira Naidu, several years ago, helped design that rooftop garden up on the Wayside Chapel. And when I was thinking of moving into Potts Point, I contacted Doug Purdy, who is the local apiarist in the kind of urban area. He has a business called Urban Beehive. So I bought a beehive from Doug, so a Billy Kwong beehive from Doug. He installed it up on the Wayside Chapel's rooftop garden. Each day, the daily visitors to the Wayside tend to the Billy Kwong beehive, and each year that beehive has produced 50 to 100 kilos worth of honey. Billy Kwong then buys the honey back from the Wayside. I send them a text message and I say, could I please get some more honey? Well, within half an hour, one of the visitors wheels it down the street for me. They're like big 7 to 10 kilo buckets of this beautiful, luscious honey, which you can actually see here. They wheel the honey down to me, and what my chefs and I do is, we use that very, very special honey to marinate the pork filling, the pork which goes inside our pork buns. So I use Saskia Beer's beautiful black Berkshire pork. We red braise this pork for several hours in a big, which is a beautiful big classic Chinese red master stock. We then chop up all of the meat. We then marinate all of that luscious meat with organic red wine, Szechuan pepper, brown rice vinegar, sesame oil, 5-spice, and of course, lots of our Billy Kwong Wayside Chapel rooftop honey. We then have our dim sum chef. He makes the special pork bun pastry, which is the white pastry around the filling, and he turns them into pork buns. So that the actual flour that he uses as well is very important. That flour is our own Billy Kwong bespoke blend of organic wheat flour, which was another collaboration that we created a year before we opened our new restaurant in Potts Point with the Neal family. Now, they are based in Gunnedah, New South Wales, and they are the founders and owners of Whole Grain Milling Company. And I've known the Neal family for over 10 to 12 years, and they supply most of the bakeries in Australia, and including the top bakeries, Iggy's Bread and Sonoma, who you will be aware of. So Craig and I and my dim sum chef spent a year developing a particular organic wheat flour blend for Billy Kwong. So the pork buns, they're not just ordinary pork buns. They're little pork buns, they're little buns of love, I call them. And they are a fantastic example of how we like to work and think and share at Billy Kwong, because they involve the entire community. And my staff and I love to share this inspirational story with all of our customers. And of course, I can't tell you how proud the daily visitors to the Wayside are when they know that their beautifully tended to honey goes into, you know, the food at Billy Kwong. So it's this wonderful kind of community, collaborative neighbourhood vibe there, and that is a really good example of how we work at Billy Kwong. Now, this is exactly the way I serve them in the restaurant. We have organic tamari, okay, and then we have a little ramekin of the Billy Kwong chili, which is literally just slow cooked chili with garlic, and it has a little bit of sugar and tamari and vegetable oil. So that gets put into the serving plate like that, and when you order these at the restaurant, we have a big industrial steamer. These are really nice and soft, and we literally just plate them up like this. I'll just turn that off now. So I just pour that, that's a little bit of glad bake there, so when the dim sum chef is rolling these each day, he puts a little bit of glad bake on the bottom, so when we go to do this at night, the actual dough doesn't stick to the steamer basket, okay? So these are our steamed mini pork buns with the Wayside Chapel rooftop honey. Okay, so that's a really good example of Billy Kwong in action. Now, the other dish I wanted to show you is a really important dish to me, and it's actually one of my favourites because of what it stands for. And I love it because it's very simple. I like simple food, simply cooked food, but I love food that's simply cooked and where you can actually taste the raw, you know, you can actually taste the ingredients. Back in 2010, Rene Redzepi, who some of you may have heard of, he is a chef who resides in Copenhagen, Denmark. He is the founder and the owner of a restaurant called Noma Restaurant. And he is, you know, undoubtedly the most influential chef of modern times. He's someone that all of we foodies and cooks and restaurateurs really look up to, and I'll tell you why. In 2010, he came to Sydney for the very first time, and he gave a keynote address at the Sydney Opera House. He was one of the headlining acts for the inaugural Sydney International Food Festival. And of course, all of we, you know, foodies and hospitality industry folk raced there and bought the tickets because we were so interested to hear what this amazing person had to say. When he first started speaking about his philosophy, which is all about highlighting the importance of using native ingredients in order to express a certain time, place, history, flavour, sense, memory, tradition, culture of the particular country, that was just like a light bulb moment for me. So what he was, so when I heard him speak about that, I'm sitting there, I'm an Australian, I'm sitting there in Sydney, Australia, I have a restaurant, and I thought to myself, Kylie, why aren't you using Indigenous Australian produce in your cooking at the restaurant? What's going on? How could you have overlooked this? And of course, I had overlooked it up until that moment. So the next day, I got on the phone to this amazing couple, Mike and Gail Quarmby of Outback Pride, Australia. Now, Outback Pride is this extraordinary organic nursery set up by Mike and Gail, and it is located in Reedy Creek, South Australia, and they specialise in organically cultivated and harvested bush foods. And several varieties, several species you can see here on this table. Beautiful saltbush, one of my favourite native plants. Warrigal greens, which is a type which is kind of like Australian spinach. Karkala, which is a type of succulent. Bower spinach, which Mike and Gail call the warrigal green of the Coorong. It's a lovely, delicate leaf. And this dish I'm about to show you is another very good example of how we express our Billy Kwong philosophy and mantra in the dishes. So I just start off with, okay, I'll just turn that on. Okay, so I mean, it's very, very simple, but I think it says a lot. So just some finely sliced ginger. You're all aware of the classic Chinese vegetable dishes, stir-fried bok choy with garlic or ginger, stir-fried Chinese broccoli, stir-fried Malaysian spinach with chili and garlic. You are all aware of those kind of very classic, simple Cantonese stir-fries. Well, I am simply, again, taking or drawing upon one of those timeless recipes that have been around for thousands of years in my culture, and I'm simply substituting the bok choy, the geylan, the Malaysian spinach with Australian native green plants. That's a very simple idea, but it says a lot, because I'm thinking, after I heard Renee speak and I felt so inspired, I thought, okay, this is an amazing way to not only showcase the flavour and the texture and the colour of our beautiful country. Imagine when, you know, international guests come to Billy Kwong, I can tell them now that this is the true flavour of our Australian bush. This is to me what multicultural Australia stands for. This is Australia on a plate. So it really helped my staff and I enhance that whole story. But more importantly, let me just take a little bit of that oil out because that came out a little bit too fast. More importantly, it allows my staff and I to pay respects to, give our support to and our acknowledgement to every single day to our original Australians, our First Nations people. That is very, very important to us, and it really made me realise how powerful food can be. Just a simple dish, what it actually says. And of course, within all of that, of course, the dish also needs to look good and taste delicious. There's no point in having all of that beautiful philosophising and all of that kind of stuff if it just doesn't work from a kind of taste and textural perspective. So a little bit of vegetable oil in. I'm putting the ginger in, the warrigal greens, sorry, the saltbush rather, the warrigal greens. You can just see how easy this is, okay? Bower spinach in there. Beautiful. This is crystal ice plant, which is kind of crunchy and sour and salty all at once. It's this extraordinary plant. And I'm literally just very quickly stir-frying this. Again, keep in the back of your mind the kind of bok choy and geylan idea. It's the same, but I'm using Australian native ingredients because we're in Australia, we're Australian, and it all makes sense. Okay, so just really quickly tossing that around, and I'll just put in a tiny little bit of water. No, tamari first, or a little bit of, you know, light soy, tiny little bit. Okay, because the actual salt bush is, of course, naturally salty. You've all heard of saltbush lamb. Okay, a little bit of sesame oil for extra flavour, a little bit of water or stock, and that's probably about it. And what you have, and of course, a really wonderful, a hot wok or a hot fry pan, whatever it is that you, whatever facility you have at home. It doesn't need to be a wok, it just needs to be, you know, really, really hot. Okay, and that's That's as simple as it gets. Okay, and this is one of the signature dishes now that we serve at the restaurant. The stir-fried Australian native greens. It's exactly the same way as we cook it. Okay, and what hopefully you'll be able to see all of the different textures there and the vibrancy. See how I don't overcook it, so the greens are, you know, really bright green. They're still alive on the plate. And again, you know, you can imagine if you are an overseas visitor coming to Australia for the first time, especially Chinese people. Let's say, you know, a lot of our clients, for example, come from Hong Kong, Chinese people from Hong Kong, and they can't get over the actual, you know, they're in a Chinese restaurant, you know, I'm Chinese, of course I'm Chinese, I look like them, all of that, yet they taste this food, and it's because what they're tasting is a taste of Australia. And in that way, it's absolutely unique, but it's meaningful and it's authentic. And as I said in the beginning, it all stemmed with the lessons that my gorgeous mother passed down to my two brothers and I, cooking with your heart and soul, cooking with intuition, and cooking with great respect. That's it for me for this afternoon. I hope you have a great rest of the conference, everyone. Thank you. Thank you.